So Attack on Titan is definitely an experience, something that is extremely memorable and brilliantly handled, something that has managed to build up a legacy in both manga and anime format. And yet, over the past couple of months, there has been a very massive increase in a problem. It's a very specific problem, one that doesn't necessarily affect everyone, but just as easily could. And this comes down to spoilers. Now, if you are anywhere within the manga community or even the anime community, spoilers are a very common thing. They're something that you kind of just have to weave through, whether you take a part in it yourself or it's something that you want to actively avoid. There's a lot of different ways and things you can do to stay clear of everything that you may or may not want to see. However, when it comes to Attack on Titan, when it comes to spoilers floating through social media before the official release, this is where things get a little bit murky, and how the perception of not only Attack on Titan but that said upcoming chapter is so warped and skewered to be usually rather negative. And I'm not sure if this is how people genuinely perceive the spoilers that they obtain or get from wherever they do, or if it's just a fickle or loose agenda to try and make Attack on Titan seem as bad as possible before the actual chapter releases. Either way you look at it, it's a weird situation. Funny enough, I didn't actually notice all too much of it until the most recent chapters. So over the past couple of months, before the chapters have even released, before visual spoilers has even been obtained or found on the internet, the usage of text and how or ill contextualized it truly is rather bothersome. Not only for myself, but for a lot of people. And it's become a very drastic thing to the point where a lot of people have already started to make videos on it. They're talking about Attack on Titan's newest chapter before it even releases. They're talking about the spoilers. And sometimes this can be a pretty normal thing to do, but when those spoilers have nothing attached to them other than just a handful of words that may have been fabricated or floated through Discord messages or Twitter DMs or somewhere within the back corner of the internet, things get lost in translation. And I can use the most recent chapter as the best example. The way the most recent spoilers was framed and contextualized was completely misaligned and so far from the truth compared to what the actual chapter actually gave us. You would think this would be an obvious thing, that people would just wait or take it with a grain of salt, as a lot of people say. Yet surprisingly, days before the chapter actually officially released, there were so many people already cancelling Attack on Titan. There were so many people already letting go of it or saying that it's the worst story within this medium. And obviously it's blowing it up unproportionately and over-exaggerating things, but there was also creators talking about these leaks, talking about these spoilers in such a, I don't want to say ill-mannered type of way, but disingenuous. Especially if they were framing their whole video around how bad Attack on Titan has become, or how broken it is, or how it's folding in on itself, or that it's become overall disappointing. Yet, funny enough, time and time again, when the chapter did come out, those very poor spoilers were completely contextualized and given life. And stuff that people hated about it, stuff that people thought was probably some of the most weirdest things that you would get from an Attack on Titan chapter, now has meaning, it now has a reason, it now has a backbone and a support and something that has so much attention poured into it. It wasn't just a slip of the moment, it wasn't just a singular page or panel. It spent almost 3/4 of the chapter doing so, giving it fuel, giving it power, giving it an impact that would last. I can't help but think that the final 2 chapters are going to be the biggest hurdles for a lot of different people, especially when it comes to a specific type of ending that they may or may not get. There's a lot of different outcomes and overall conclusions here, but if you don't get the right one you want, there may be an issue. And for a decent percentage of people, that seems to be the mindset, that if it doesn't go down this route, doesn't go this specific way, these characters don't do these specific things, Attack on Titan is bad. I feel like it's pretty obvious that this happens within pretty much every community for the most part because of how massive Attack on Titan has become. It's a legacy that it's built, both the manga and anime communities. I think there's a surprising amount of people that don't really like how Attack on Titan is going to conclude. And I feel like that they can see it pretty much on the horizon. Maybe the spoilers has tainted their faith in Hajime Isayama, even though the chapter released after the spoilers gives life and meaning to everything. I feel like people have given up hope. that because this isn't ending in potentially total annihilation, the story is bad. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's the biggest thing. Even though Isayama could easily throw curveballs and any sort of subverting of expectation that actually matter, that truly has some sort of connection to everything, he's extremely good at doing it and hiding it in plain sight. And there probably is things here, but with 2 chapters remaining, it's very difficult for me to see that this story is going to turn itself around and continue the rumbling. If anything, these final 2 chapters have to be somewhat specifically dedicated to bringing characters and the whole narrative to a conclusion, bringing it to a resting point. There's a reason why there's meant to be a whole ending sequence for your story. It's because it takes time to put these characters into position to not only reflesh them out just a little bit, to have your focus on them and then bring everything to an end. It's usually connected to a final arc. And it's probably the biggest reason why a lot of these series that have ended that don't really have a final sequence, a handful of chapters to boil everything back down to a simmer to allow people to come to their own idea that this story is ending. Instead, it's just very abrupt and force-fed within 1 chapter. It seems very abrupt, extremely quick and rather chaotic. It doesn't really make sense. To put simply, it's jarring, and it's something that a lot of authors probably don't want to do. I guarantee they want to avoid it, but sometimes because of the situation, because of how odd the manga industry is and how volatile it truly can be and unhealthy for the individuals working on this stuff, sometimes it just goes down that route. However, we've had the smallest glimpse of how Attack on Titan is going to end, what the final panel will actually contain. What Isayama is doing now is boiling everything down. We've got the action, we've got the death and destruction and the utter annihilation of Marley and how gruesome and visceral that truly was. Some of the most incredible and captivating and surreal panels that you could imagine we have all got within this final arc. Isayama did not hold back when showcasing these gruesome atrocities of war, so why does he need to go back? In 2 chapters, there would be no way for him to peek over what he has already shown us, whether it be destruction, whether it be fighting or craziness or chaoticness. There's nothing that he could realistically do to bring all of that up again, to make it even more climatic than what we have already seen. What I'm trying to say is that even though he has blurred the final sequence of his story, the conclusion within the final arc of his story, they've kind of overlapped and merged within one another. The experience reading it has been nothing short of incredible, that's for sure. But I wouldn't be surprised if people aren't used to the pacing. Everyone's so consistent and used to these very high peaks with these very sharp and declined drops that just change the story very quickly. It's a very jarring experience. Whereas Isayama has built everything up for so long, just gradually molding and building and constructing and fueling everything, laying all the groundwork before he peaked everything up extremely quickly. And it wasn't even quickly. If anything, it was such a slow, methodical and precise build up to all of these events. And when it happened, it peaked, but it consistently peaked. It didn't just narrowly drop off, it continued to go as high as you could ever imagine it, showing all of these things, seeing all of these innocent people die, the emotions, the impact that it has. The whole story has led up to this point. But now that it has started to dwindle and slowly come to a conclusion and boil down to those final moments, the pacing seems off. It doesn't have that sharp decline in a plot twist or a subverting of expectation or a time skip or something else. It doesn't have a dip and then another rise into something even bigger, another peak that overshadows everything that has happened. It's a very common thing for authors to do, and I understand why people are used to it. But I think it's safe to assume that everything's done, that Attack on Titan has reached its ending point. Now what the final 2 chapters are most likely going to do is bring the emotions, the personality, the characteristics all to a conclusion. Because that right now is where the importance is. How these people are feeling, their goals, their freedoms, their ideals, how they've perceived this event, how they perceive Eren Yeager. What happens to him? Does he come back out of this realm, or most likely what I've been saying for probably over a year now, does he get locked away within there? Does he become the sole person that holds everything together, that takes all of these titans and brings them back within Ymir's realm and completely locks it off so no one could ever touch it ever again. But the price of this is his own life. To be the founding titan in place of Ymir, because she's technically free, someone has to do it. So I think because of the spoilers and how obscure they are, and how they kind of build an idea that isn't even there, inlay this negative thought process for Attack on Titan, because that's usually the most consistent thing about spoilers, is that Isayama has broke a story. It has destroyed Attack on Titan. These are the worst spoilers that you can imagine. You will most likely see that every single month, especially leading up to the conclusion. So the pacing is a little bit unorthodox and unusual, but still manageable. I think first and foremost, those are the reasons why people think Attack on Titan has destroyed itself. It's the more extreme version, that's for sure, but there is definitely a lot of people out there that are like that. And to be honest, you're perfectly able to think like that. If that's how you feel at the end of the day, that's perfectly fine. For the other percentage of people that don't indulge in spoilers, if you don't like it, that's perfectly fine too. I feel like there's this weird thing where everyone has to like Attack on Titan's ending. I have my own gripes with a lot of things within Attack on Titan, and I'm usually very vocal about it. If you dislike something, you dislike something. You don't have to let anyone convince you. More importantly, you don't have to convince anyone else that you dislike it. It's as simple as that. And for the remaining percentage of people, don't worry about the spoilers. Don't even touch them. Don't even look into them. Trust me, it's not worth it. The spoilers are usually completely uncontextualized and have no meaning or weight behind it whatsoever, and it's the reason why a lot of people get riled up before the chapter actually releases. You'd be surprised how common and consistent that is, and how constantly I personally see it. At this rate, only time will tell. Don't let uncontextualized spoilers ruin your ending or your experience, and we shall all witness the conclusion of this incredible manga together. So with that being said, that is basically it. If you are someone that reads the spoilers, or someone that may be unhappy with Attack on Titan currently, let me know your concerns. What aren't you vibing with Attack on Titan? Is it something to do with the pacing? Maybe it's the more recent Titan stuff? Do you absolutely despise the spoilers for how completely horrific they are, because they usually are? And do you wish you could get out of that mindset of viewing them every single month? I know for some people it's kind of like an addiction, and I can't blame you for that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But I want to thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Drink plenty of water, and I will see you within the next one. Goodbye.